Welcome to episode number 76 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording on July the 12th, 2020. My name's Eric. I'm the host of the show based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and computer geek. As a first responder, I've witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events, and I started a small preparedness company to help people get prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
And I'm Alan. I'm a safety trainer, first responder, security expert, and overall safety nerd.
And if you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, you can buy a Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt at rapidsurvival.com. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
If you are enjoying the show, please take a few minutes, like us on Facebook, and submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, even if there's just a show topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
And we've got some boiling point content for you in this episode. Oh, terrible jokes. Boo. We're going to start off with some preparedness related news. Next, we'll let you know what we've done to help our preparedness since the last episode. Then we're going to get into the main topic, which is heat wave and what you can do to help stay cool. Let's move into some news.
This was topical rather specifically because of the weather we went through here in Southern Ontario this week. We had a week of 15 days, I think, of 40 plus degree humidex ratings, which is bad news in general. But the news article that I put in here was actually about the rainfall that we had on Friday night in my area. Just an absolutely enormous volume of rain. Didn't really see much about it on in the media, but it just I've never seen that much rain, flooding out roads and fields and all kinds of mean, nasty, ugly things. And I mean, I'm looking out, it's been 2 days since it rained now. It was Friday night, it's now Sunday night, and I can still see puddles in the fields out behind my house. It's we've talked about flooding before, but I think I'm going to invest in ducks rather than chickens.
Yeah, I think flooding might be a thing in the preparedness world.
Just maybe.
Might be on some people's list.
Should be, anyways.
Yeah, we saw quite a good downpour last night, and it's coming down pretty heavy for 5 or 10 minutes, and it puddled, it pooled, it ran all over the place. It was nice though; it cooled everything down because it's been ridiculously warm here too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it was an absolutely pleasant day today. 26, 27 degrees with the humidex and nice sun and nothing too terrible. But last week, I mean, health and safety is a big part of my world, and there were 80% of the construction sites that I deal with that were still in exterior work were completely shut down because it was too hot for the workers. Illegally hot.
Had the same issue. I know the last couple episodes I've talked about getting the back pond filled in and getting the backyard all sorted and squared away. And same thing, we've had a crew that's been out pouring a bunch of fill, but they weren't able to work for a couple of days because it was just simply too hot.
It's just dangerous. So, and we'll talk about why that's dangerous in a little bit. So. What do you have for news, Eric?
So for myself, I pulled up one article here, same kind of idea as yours there, Alan. And as far as Ontario, Quebec are sweating through what could be the hottest stretch of 2020. So I think we've already gone over that quite significantly enough. It was hot, it was warm, and then it rained. And I had another article here in regards to 2 ships that collided head-on in Ontario's Welland Canal. And there's a video there in the link as well. So check the show notes out if anyone's interested in seeing that happen. It's nothing crazy except 2 big ships kind of bonk each other, and there's some damage, but nothing, nobody's hurt from the looks of it. No ships sank, but
without giving too much away, does anybody are there guys with accents yelling at each other from the boats? Because that would just make it perfect.
You do hear a warning siren going off on one of them. Apparently, It's a pretty common area in the canal where boats pass each other. It's chosen that location to pass because it's a wide open area. For whatever reason, 2 of them just decided to meet up and kiss. So,
well, I mean, this is a good reminder to yield the right of way. So you yield to the right, and they yield to the right, and theoretically,
you shouldn't hit each other. Yeah.
Theoretically.
I figured it was good to know, or something to think about, keep in the back of your head, is if they were carrying something dangerous and it was a little bit more of an impact, it could have been a bad day for people in and around the canal, right? So
it could have been a really bad day for a lot of people, absolutely, because that canal, like it stretches for a long ways and affects a lot of water systems. It's there's a lot that could go wrong there.
and I'm seeing some comments here in the live chat in regards to us talking about the heat. I guess in Texas they're dealing with a heat of 102. That'll be Fahrenheit, I believe, in the States. And we've got another one here at 116 in Phoenix today.
Woo. I really hope that's Fahrenheit.
Yeah. If it's not, they're in trouble.
My great aunt, she was born, like my grandma and my aunt were born in Michigan, ended up in Southern Ontario. She retired to Arizona, and she would come up and visit my grandma a couple of times a year in the summer, because that was the only time she was interested in coming north. And it would be, 28, 30 degrees here, so 34, 35 with the humidex, which is 80, 85, 90, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And my aunt would be, or I guess my great aunt would be, like walking around the house with a sweater on, because it wasn't hot enough for her. I mean, she's long past now, but I wonder now what she would have thought about this past week, because I don't ever remember temperatures this hot in Southern Ontario.
No, it's been pretty warm.
And so what have we done?
Yeah. So what I've done lately for prep since last episode. So I finished off session number 1 of the advanced ham course put on by RAC. So there was a lot of math. It's it's every Monday. It starts at 8:30, runs through to 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. I must say the instructor so far I've been quite impressed with, because if you can get me to understand math, you're a good teacher.
I can count, as long as I can count it on my fingers and toes. I can figure it out. Beyond that, I'm going for my calculator. I did, as I'm preparing to write my my basic qualification in 2 weeks. I went out and actually bought myself a calculator, so that I didn't have to keep going back to my computer and opening my calculator every time I want to try and figure out some of these equations. I'm not good at math. I can do the basic times tables, but no, I'm.
You just like me then. It's the one nice thing with this exam. When you do go with the sit for it, you can bring in a calculator. It can't have anything that memorizes equations or anything, but you can bring in a calculator, and it's a lot of algebra, and it's a lot of just memorizing of formulas. For this section anyways, the instructor promised that's all the math we're going to need. The rest is all theory, so I'm good. But it was a lot of math, especially getting around about 10:30 at night on a Monday.
No kidding.
But oh well. And then, like I mentioned, the backyard's starting to take shape. We've got some loads of dirt in the ground, and we're slowly starting to reclaim some property. So
fantastic.
Finally happening. Although the heat wave, like we said, did put the kibosh on that for a couple of days, but it's starting to take shape. I am also finding out that having neighbors around us is not nearly as fun as I thought it may have been. Some like the pond being filled in, but politics.
Well, it's an interesting situation, that's for sure.
Yeah, mainly the real estate agent that sold the house behind us is not too impressed, but I'll leave it at that.
Seems like a him problem.
I also upgraded my ham base station here in the office. So I switched from a QYT KT7900D to the TYT 8900. It's just got a few more buttons and some other settings and things I can play with. So it was time to upgrade.
Is that what you were? Is that what you had out when I was there? What was that, last week, 2 weeks ago?
That was the X5105. So that was an HF station. So that's a portable HF station. The TYT 8900 is like a mobile unit, or one that you can. It's a base station, so you can either put it in a vehicle, or in this instance, I have it in my vehicle in my truck, but I also put it here in the office. So you can kind of mount it wherever you want. It's a base station.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right on. There's some notes from Ian. Ian's not here. I don't know, work or something.
Yeah, he said something about not liking the audience anymore.
Yeah, well, that's... Can you blame him? No, that was... I did not mean that. I love all of you. For me, I got some camping gear squared away. We've got a big camp coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to go... essentially off grid for 9 days to be self-contained, which is going to be fun.
Nice.
So kind of getting that ready to go and deciding what we're going to take and how lightweight we want to be with our kind of our day treks rather than our base camp, and it's going to be that's going to be fun. Spent most of last week giving my chainsaw a good workout. I think I said on the last episode we brought down a big maple tree that is now into a whole lot of smaller pieces. So then today I spent a fair bit of time today doing a good maintenance on that, tune up the chain, tune up the blade, or tune up the bar, and clean all the intakes and everything. So unfortunately we're under a fire ban in this area because it's been so hot and so dry. So it's made it difficult to get a lot of progress on the little stuff, but getting there slowly. Other than that, I've been working a lot and trying to stay hydrated.
That's the key.
It sure is.
All right, let's move into the main topic now that you're talking about hydration. That's a good segue.
That was a great segue. That was phenomenal. That was like radio level segue. That was amazing.
Episode 66, we're getting the hang of it.
Just like 400 more episodes and we'll be good to go.
That will be fine.
So our main topic tonight, of course, is beating the heat and what the challenges are. The number one killer in the heat, of course, is dehydration, which simply means, for the uninitiated, it simply means a lack of natural fluid in your body. Every cell in our body lives on adequate water supply, and if we don't have an adequate water supply, then we die, plain and simple. When we talk about our survival priorities, we usually say the rule of threes, right? You can go 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. 3 days without water in temperatures like this is a really long time. You're going to be hurting pretty good. Oh, you're going to be hurting pretty good. I would say if you're not drinking every hour, from a health and safety perspective, we say you've got to be drinking at least like 1 cup or 250 mils of water every 20 minutes, and that's your bare minimum. Yep. So one of the thing I get asked all the time in my first aid classes is, how do you tell when somebody's dehydrated? There are two basic measurements of dehydration. One is your sweat, right? How much you're sweating or how little. The more dehydrated you are, the less you sweat. And the second is your urinary output. Most of the time, if you are well hydrated, you should be urinating on a fairly regular basis, and it should be reasonably clear or light yellow. The darker it is, the more you need to drink. And that's the rule. I mean, that's the ultimate measurement. You can't say that a certain amount of fluid intake overcomes dehydration, because everybody's different. I sweat a lot, and so if I don't drink 4 liters of water on a daily basis anyways, I feel it. So on a hot day, one day last week, and I try and mitigate my water intake when I'm out driving, simply because under the COVID rules, there's no place to pee anywhere.
There certainly isn't.
But I went through 7 liters of water sitting in my car and just sweat it all out while I was out doing my job. And that wasn't even a physically strenuous job. That's a lot of water. That's a lot of sweat.
It's a lot of empty bottles too.
It's I'll leave that there though. Well, I mean, at least they stayed empty,
Okay, fair enough.
But as a general rule, however much you normally drink, when it gets hot or you're going to be exerting yourself, double it. And that's it's a rule. It's a guideline. Some people need more. Some people need less. I know, and a lot of that too comes back to how well acclimatized you are to the heat. There are some people that I know who spend their entire day. Roofers are a prime example of this. They spend their entire day baking in the sun, and it doesn't bother them because they've been doing it forever, and it's just fine. Other people like me who have soft office hands, and they aren't hardened tradesmen anymore. They get in the heat, and they just absolutely die. Like it just can't be done. It's without some big problems.
There's the age old question when we do start talking about hydration and drinking water. Cold versus hot drinks, always a debate. Some people will say cold is great, others say hot, is better.
So the differential, I mean, when we're speaking like from a medical standpoint, and I would imagine that there's somebody out there with a greater medical qualification than I have that could maybe chime in on this in the comments. But medically speaking, adding heat to heat creates more heat.
Yeah.
Right. I think most people who can follow a scientific process can understand that. You might not feel the difference, right? You might not feel the difference. Like it reduces the difference in temperature, but that doesn't actually make you cooler. That said, there's also a lot of debate about putting cold drinks into a hot body. In the same way that you don't pour cold water into a hot radiator of a car, you wouldn't. There's a theory out there that says if you have a cold drink while you're overheated, it can cause trauma to your system.
And Ian's fashionably late again.
Hey, look at that! You made it.
Yeah, I always keep waiting. That's what I say. Yeah, so I guess we're ready at my first point there.
We are, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I was going out of order. We're actually at your third point, but I won't tell you which other two we've covered. You just have to figure it out.
Okay, yeah, actually, the cool drinks versus hot thing. It was actually kind of funny because I actually had some guy try and convince me that drinking hot drinks on hot days is the best because it makes you sweat and it makes you feel cooler. I'm like, I don't know about that because it's a whole energy thing. It's gonna take energy from your body to heat up that water. You're gonna feel cooler. I mean, I'd rather pour cold water on top of my head than not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been coached to give cool drinks, not cold drinks, right? You don't want anything heated, but you don't want anything that's iced down either, because again, we're introducing the possibility for shock.
Yeah. So a touch above room temperature, I usually do.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any one right answer. I think it's safe to say that cool is better than cold. And if anybody tries to take away my coffee, despite the fact that it's hot, I will hurt them. So it would be very dangerous for your health to try and take away my hot drinks.
Yeah, do not take away my coffee. Also
may explain the British people's absolute fanaticism with not putting ice in their gin and tonic, which just drives me batty.
Oh no! If any liquor worth drinking is worth drinking without ice.
Yeah.
Asked for ice in my gin and tonic one time over there, and they gave me one ice cube. I'm like, seriously? Come on.
Well, that just settles it. Don't go to England.
That's right. Yeah. So, anyways, sorry to be late there, guys. Just duty called, right?
It's okay. It's fine. We were carrying it without you just fine.
We were doing just fine.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's see here. What else can we talk about here on that note? Heat stroke.
We do have a couple of questions here in the live chat if you want to go low.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got one from Freedom for Us on water storage. Which is better as an outside storage tank, black or white?
I think it's more important to have the right type of plastic rather than the color of plastic.
Well, there is one little thing, though. If you want to prevent algae growth, white seems to work better. If you want to keep it from freezing, obviously black works better. So it depends if you get lots of sun but cold temperatures. There is some passive heating going on there with the solar aspect, and it might save you a little bit of energy costs and maybe keeps pipes from freezing. But white will actually be a little more opaque and prevent algal growth, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And yeah, you got to keep in mind the wintertime, too. So having it black in the wintertime, you're going to get more sun. It's going to keep it from freezing. And
there's a lot of places where they actually just have black tanks on top of the roofs to actually do free hot water for life type of thing.
Yeah.
Yep. I know a lot of people that have black pipe tubes on their roof that act as water, at least water preheaters, so their hot water, their gas fired heater doesn't have to work as hard.
Or heating the pool too, same idea.
Yeah, same concept.
And we've got one here from John asking if in Canada central air conditioning is real popular. I know some places like New York don't have AC. So for the most part, I find it in most buildings I go into here. So.
I think just about every commercial building has central air conditioning. Most houses are being built with it. I would say probably a good 60 to 70% of houses would have it in, at least in my part of Canada.
Same.
My house doesn't, but that's because my house predates electricity and indoor plumbing, and some of the updates that were made did not include ductwork. So we have a portable air conditioner that we use just to keep the upper level, the second floor, at an acceptable temperature. We've just been running it on dehumidify, and it's been keeping everything cool enough to sleep. So we keep the fans going and we keep it on dehumidify, and it's been just fine. But I would say like most places have central air conditioning.
Yeah. Except for like in places where it makes absolutely no sense, like, Nunavut, and, even in places like Alberta. I mean, like, it doesn't get hot enough that often to justify it. There's no air conditioning on the West Coast generally, because unless it's like a commercial building, but in private houses, no, because for the 5-6 days you might need it, it's just not worth having it.
So yeah, I guess it is regional too, right? I mean, here we get 40, plus 45 summers and minus 45 winters, and so you've got to have a good heating and theoretically a good air conditioning system. I despise air conditioning. I don't like the smell of the air, so I'm not upset to not have air conditioning. I've worked in air conditioned offices, and I find I can't concentrate because there's just something about it that messes with my head. So
it actually does cause lung problems too. If you're going from hot to cold air all the time, if you're going outside inside quite a bit, it actually can cause like a form of pneumonia, and I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it's, or maybe it's bronchitis, one of the two anyways, but I was told it's very, very hard on your lungs actually.
Yeah, I could see that.
That I absolutely believe that.
Heat stroke.
Yeah. So we can speak about heat stroke specifically, but I would rather talk about the broader spectrum of heat illnesses. So it starts off kind of as heat cramps, and then heat exhaustion, and then heat stroke is the latest stage of that. Essentially, they're all various stages of dehydration and electrolyte depletion, right? So your heat cramps are the lowest level. I'm sure all of us have experienced that at some point in our lives. It's hot, you're working outside, not drinking enough water, or maybe a little too much beer, and you go to do something, and especially your legs tend to cramp up. That's usually an indication of mild dehydration and low sodium levels in your body. With heat exhaustion, it's a little bit more, and that's, the solution to that, right? The first aid solution to that: get out of the heat, right? Find some shade, get some cool fluids in you, and electrolyte replacement is the best. There are all kinds of options for that. Gatorade is one brand of electrolyte replacement. I'm not a fan of the premix stuff because it always tends to have a ton of sugar in it, which can cause different problems. The stuff that I use, I keep, and this is not a paid endorsement in any way, shape, or form, but I really enjoy electrolyte powder from a company called BioSteel. You can order it directly online. I think they also have them in Sport Check stores if you're in Canada, and I've got it's completely sugar free, but its ingredient list is almost the same in terms of the electrolytes, which is magnesium, potassium, and sodium. You lose that stuff when you sweat, and that's what causes those cramps. Heat exhaustion, a little bit more to it. You're at a higher level of dehydration, usually indicated by like profuse sweating and red skin. Sometimes a little bit of dizziness, lightheadedness. Again, I would say most people have experienced this at some point in their lives. It's unpleasant. It needs a little bit more active cooling. This to me is the time, if I'm, stop whatever it is that you're doing, take a break, go jump in the river, jump in the pool, take a cold shower. I encourage people to turn the hose on your body if they're showing those signs. That is like, we're not into a medical emergency at this point, but it's a big deal.
Hence the term redneck, right?
Exactly. Keep it. If you can control it at this level, then you're probably going to have you can deal with the rest of the day. I find this with construction workers specifically; they tend to just power through it and get to the point where it gets really bad for them, and then we end up with a medical emergency of heat stroke. Heat stroke is specifically indicated by the really hot skin and an altered mental status. Right? They tend to be confused, dizzy, sometimes aggressive behavior. But mostly it's when they've stopped sweating. When somebody doesn't have enough moisture left in their body to continue sweating, that's when you've got a real problem, right? That's when we're starting to deal with kidney failure and liver issues, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, right? Which is just going to compound the dehydration. That's what leads to people passing out and eventually dying because they don't have any fluids. I will argue, and I'm sure that, again, if you ask 10 different people who are any level of knowledgeable in the field, you're going to get 10 different opinions. Somebody who has stopped sweating has lost too much fluid to be able to put it back in on their own. They need an IV. They need it to be medically supervised, because there's a lot that's going on there, and there's potential for a lot of damage. No matter what, get that person cool. Get rid of anything that's restricting evaporation, which is kind of leading me to my next point. But restricting evaporation, because our bodies, like, sweat is our body's cooling mechanism. So if we're sweating, the theory is the water in your sweat absorbs the heat, it evaporates, it cools your body. What we tend to experience here in Ontario, or in the central part of the continent, is such high humidity levels that there's nowhere for the sweat to go. We've seen it a bunch of times this week, where the humidity is up around 80-90%, but it's also full sun, and there's just nowhere for the sweat to dissipate, and that becomes a major problem. That's why we have actually a fairly high incidence of heat emergencies and illnesses in like in the southern Ontario, and I'm sure in the Michigan, Ohio, kind of New York, Pennsylvania area as well, right? Just because we've got such high levels of humidity that there's just nowhere for your sweat to evaporate. Right? It's like pouring water into a puddle. Yeah, you did it, but there's no effect. So
I mean, west of Lake Superior, basically, like in summertime, you can usually still find most places, if you just dunk your shirt with water, and it'll evaporate off and be dry in an hour or two, because which also saves you from having to sweat it all out. But yeah, it's a totally different scenario for us, right?
Yeah, and it's just a it's a different climate, and that climate causes different problems. I have a friend in Alberta, and he makes fun of me when I say that it's the humidity is what's killing us. He's like, that's the most dad thing you can possibly say. It's not the heat, it's the humidity, but it really is.
No, that's what I was going to get to, because I mean, they say it's a dry heat. I mean, you never feel the heat nearly as bad out west as you do out east, because it's always dry air.
Yep, it's dry air, and there's more of a wind blowing, right? And that's the big one, right?
Which leads me to my own story about my son, heat exhaustion. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So back in the when I was courting my wife, I decided to show her how cool I was by building a deck in her back of her house there, and so naturally I had to take off the shirt to show off these guns, type of thing. So here I go, and so only wussies use sunscreen. So there I was in the Calgary extreme summer or whatever in July anyway, and yeah, sure enough, I couldn't figure out why I stopped sweating after a while, and I was getting kind of dizzy, and I had a couple of glasses of water, but whatever, and I got to show off for the ladies. And then so after I got inside, and she called me Lobster Man for years afterwards, because basically it's like you could see my white buttocks and then the bright red back. But then later on that night, it turns out that my skin actually blistered up.
Oh. So we've gone to a second-degree burn.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned this on my 16th birthday, when I had a very similar thing. It was my, it was the uniform tan. Sorry, it was head and neck, forearms, except for the watch, and that was about it. But it was similar, where it was the second-degree burn, or medium thickness burn, depending on which protocol you're listening to. Skin will burn as long as it's hot.
Yeah, so that's the amazing thing is that like it's Calgary is further north than most of Ontario, and it wasn't really like a super intense day, but that's enough to give you second-degree burns. So it's just something to think
Absolutely.
about, like when you think it's not a big deal.
Yeah, 100%. It's we all love being outside. Do it safely, because there's a lot that can go wrong. And I was out camping last weekend, and it was stinking hot, and we were all dehydrated. There were 6 of us camping, like 6 of us on the site. We went through 4 cases and then another 20 liters of water between 6 of us over 2 days.
Wow, it's a lot of water.
It was a lot of water, and
Sure that wasn't beer?
I was on top of the beer. Like that was on addition to the beer, which maybe those two things might have been a little bit related, but it's no joke, right? You can dehydration leads to all kinds of bad decisions. It leads to unconsciousness, and that also happens when you're driving, right? If the air conditioning in your vehicle doesn't work, and for some reason you can end up overheated, and if you're overheated in your car, then you pass out, and then you've created a whole new cascade of problems for yourself.
Oh yeah. And the heat sneaks up on you quickly too.
Oh, it sure does. You don't even notice. It's like drinking beer when you're sitting down, and all of a sudden you stand up and go, "Oh, right, yeah."
Oh yeah, and I mean, when you get burns like that on your back too, you can certainly have a case of shock happening. Like I started shaking afterwards, and a couple of years later, we're like, I probably should.
Oh, I think we lost you again.
Oh, that's too bad.
Too bad.
I think what he was going to say is you probably should have gone to the doctor for that, and definitely sought some kind of medical treatment. Anytime there's blistering, you should go have it checked out. Make sure that it's not too bad. Dehydration.
I thought he was just going to say I should go back out in the sun.
Yeah,
no,
well, there could be that too. I mean, he's not from Alberta, so that might not have been his natural instinct. So.
Oh, fair enough.
Oh no, I am though.
Oh, you are from Alberta?
Yeah. That is the motherland. I was born and raised in Alberta.
I stand corrected. Then he probably was. He should have gone back out in the sun and done the other side, so at least it was even.
That's right.
Shall we touch on the power grid?
Yeah. So I mean, I did have a note there. So basically, unlike furnace fans, which do draw power, but not as much as say an air conditioning plus a fan, the power grid actually goes under more stress in hotter weather than it does in extreme cold weather. Yeah. As a general rule for overall usage. So yeah, I mean, not only does the actual electrical wire face higher resistance in hot weather, plus increased use, there's also more demand. So to balance that, of course, if your nuclear plants are providing you with power, like in say Ontario, the water differential of temperature is actually what I guess dictates their efficiency. So if the water is nice and cold, they can put out more power, but the warmer the water gets, the less power they can actually create. So based on their cooling needs. So higher demand, lower efficiency, and that leads to all sorts of hilarity like 2003, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep, that was that was a rough week. I have a lot of memories of that week. It was not good. That was the week that we realized that the ambulance dispatch in this particular part of the area of the province was in a building that had windows that couldn't open, and so while they had a generator to keep their systems going, the building didn't have a generator to keep their AC going.
Oh, that's a bit of an overthought.
Yeah, so that was, and they didn't have any fans, they didn't have any way to generate fresh air, and they couldn't open the windows, and so they took a 40-degree day, put it inside a glass building, so you had the greenhouse effect, and within about 15 minutes, the building went from, I think they said that because they could still monitor it somehow, I forget, but it went from 23 degrees Celsius to 38 degrees Celsius in under an hour without the AC going. Fortunately, we had a backup plan for that, but it was it took a little bit of time. It was a portable plan. It was a mobile command post that had radios that could be set up like that were in it. It was a semi-trailer. Great little system, but it was it took some time to get rolling, and so there was they had to redistribute the dispatch system for a couple of hours while they got their feet under them.
How about pools?
It was a rough summer. Yep.
Did they move the pools? Pools are great.
We
should probably just all go to the pool.
Yep. I'm 100% on board with that.
There's a lot to be said about having a little kiddie pool in your backyard if you can't afford anything else.
Oh yeah.
just 'cause there's some days where you just want to just dunk, and just it's
Just set a rule: no cameras, no phones nearby.
Yeah. You can still have a floating chair in a kiddie pool, right? I mean, your legs might dangle over the edge, but you can still
really, really big wheelbarrows.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the fire service, we have if in your especially rural fire services where there aren't fire hydrants, they have this fun little system. So there's a big tanker truck, which is literally just a big fire truck full of water, and it has what we call a porta pond or a pool that we set up and then dump water into so that fire trucks can draw from it. And they're about they're anywhere from like 1,800 to 3,000 gallons. So they're like it's a significant pool. Usually about 10 by 10 feet, 2 or 3 feet deep. But man, I've been on some fire scenes, and I'm looking at that pool, and it's 40 degrees, and I'm thinking, I could just dip in there for a few seconds, and it would be so nice because that water gets refreshed about every 5 minutes too, so it's all coming fresh out of the hydrant, and it's nice and cool. I've yet to do it. I've been told that it's probably less than professional of me to take off my bunker gear and jump in the porta pond, but whatever. Sometimes
close to the retirement.
Yeah, that feels like a last day on the job kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. John in the live chat here brings up a point. He goes, if you need a pool, you can just put up a tarp in the back and fill it up. Yeah, in
the back of a pickup truck. What a great idea.
Yeah,
that would certainly work.
Yeah.
Growing up without a pool, we were always fans of the sprinkler, right? You put the sprinkler on the lawn and run through that, or when we got a little bit older, just kind of lie down through that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different options, but I like that in a pinch with the tarp.
Yeah, why not? That's a great idea. Why not do that? I think that's a fantastic plan. I'm gonna have to try that at some point.
Yeah. We'll have to do it during a podcast gathering at some point.
Well, then we'd have to drive around at least a little bit until we get caught at least.
Of course. What else is on our notes? So we had pools. We've talked a lot about the dealing with it. Stay out of the sun if you can, right? Especially in the hottest part of the day. Now, all the health and safety regulations and guidelines that I see say you stay away from stay out of the sun during the hottest part of the day, which is 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you work outside, that's your entire day gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's just realize that that's probably not going to happen. But if you can erect some shade of some kind, if you can change your tasks so that you're doing the inside stuff in the hottest part of the day and doing your outside stuff either first thing or last thing in the day, that would be good. Avoid things that create extra heat while you're in the heat. I noticed Eve says less strenuous activities such as reloading rather than blacksmithing in the heat. That's two extremes there.
I would think we'll have to get Owen on here one day, but I'm sure at some point he'd probably admit that blacksmithing is more of a winter activity than heat of the summer thing. But during the heat of the day, I think I literally do a siesta, or I'll go out and just do something undercover, like reloading or whatever, just if it gets that bad. Because it gets a little insane.
And keep in mind too your clothing, right? You want to choose something that's loose, kind of lightweight, breathable fabrics. Over synthetics would be nice too. Helps with the sweating and cooling off. So
cotton is raw.
Yep.
A cotton t-shirt can absorb almost 6 pounds of moisture. That means that it's heavy and it's wet and it's not evaporating properly.
Nope.
I was just going to mention if in case of bug out, just one thing to keep in mind how to deal with it. If you have to, for whatever reason, travel by foot, broken down car, whatever, consider moving at night versus the heat of the day, right? So, take a break in some shade during the day, move at night if you can, just to offset your water output and or your efficiency yourself, because you're going to move slower when you're super hot than you are if you're cooler.
Absolutely, that's a good point. And especially if you're, especially if you've got to go a significant distance, and as long as you can navigate safely at night, right? If you've got roads to follow, then that's a much better option.
And if you are bugging in for whatever reason, you've chosen to stay at your house, or you're not even in a bug-in, bug-out situation, you're just trying to cool down, use every type of fan you have in the house. Like ceiling fans, for example, make sure that they're going counterclockwise. That's going to blow the air downward towards you. Clockwise in the wintertime sucks the cold air up, or the hot air up. And then you want counterclockwise in the summer, blows air down towards you. But keep in mind to turn those off if you do leave, because they're not helping anybody if you're not in the house. No need to keep them running, but it's just going to burn electricity at that point. But when you're in the house, ceiling fans and all kinds of fans are going to be your friend, right?
I did ask my wife a couple times to see if she could wave the fan at me during hot weather, but she just took it and smacked me upside the head with it. So
how are you still alive?
He travels a lot.
Yeah, would you mind? Yeah.
So you can maximize the effect of a fan. So that produces a wind chill effect, right? We love that in the summer, but it's our enemy in the winter. If you want to maximize that fan, if the fan is your way to go, a little bit of moisture on your skin, right? Damp skin will increase the wind chill effect. So a wet t-shirt, guys,
I didn't know it was that kind of show.
Just go right past that.
Yeah.
But a wet t-shirt with a fan blowing across it will cool you down faster than a dry t-shirt with a fan blowing across it.
Yep, that's a good point.
And so you can what we've done in the ambulance service for years. Somebody who's overheated, we'd put a sheet on them, get the sheet wet, and then you just pick up the sheet and flap it, and it creates a wind chill, and will cool somebody down really, really fast.
Nice. Yeah, you gotta take that evaporating process and put it to your advantage, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Public service announcement for dogs and people in cars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you leave a dog or a person in a car, and I happen to walk by it, I will break all the windows, slash all the tires, just out of spite. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't.
The first window will be a rescue. The rest of it will just be vengeful.
Well, I'll take a picture at least beforehand, so at least you can prove to the cops that you broke it for a reason. But yeah, I mean, obviously, people will leave various kids and dogs in cars, thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to go in for a couple minutes." It does not take long to heat up those cars.
No, it does not.
Yeah. So
there's a local radio station here, and every year, as their public service announcement, as the sun gets hot, they start at 5:30 in the morning before the sun comes up, and they put a tray of cookies, like cookie dough, on the dashboard of one of their cars. And then by the time the show is done, so they're on 5:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. So at 5:30 they put it on the dash. The sun comes up about 5:45, 6 o'clock in late June, and by 9 o'clock they have fully baked cookies in their car. And
wow.
it takes well less time than that. It's within an hour. So when it's hot, those things are quite literally ovens, but really hot ovens at that. So yeah, no, there's never a good time to leave a person or an animal in a car if the air temperature is going to be more than 15 degrees. This is not a discussion.
No, it's just a bad idea.
Yep.
Cool.
One other tip for your house: if you don't have air conditioning in the morning, open the windows up, let the cold air come through. But as soon as you start to see the temperature creeping up, close your windows up, pull your curtains down. That'll keep some cold air, keep your house cooled down, and keep some cold air circulating in the house for a little while at least.
And knocks down the incoming solar radiation too, which is going to heat up the house by greenhouse effect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. And quick shout out to Hughes, who did leave a comment, says he's listening from the campfire. We're a little bit jealous, and
a lot jealous.
We expect to see you next week.
Absolutely.
Cool. Just want to mention too that mechanical issues with generators can also happen just as readily in hot weather as they can in cold, because of obviously overheating versus things being stiff or broken, cracked, whatever.
Yep.
So don't depend on it just because it's already hot and warmed up doesn't mean it's going to work perfectly.
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't have to.
Everything goes slower in the heat, just like everything goes slower in the cold.
Yeah, if you're gonna try and do the barbecue thing just to offset the heat, that's something to think about too. Like just to
don't heat up your house. No, I cook outside as much as I can, and I do that year round. But I mean, you cook something in the oven in the winter, and you notice how much your kitchen heats up. You have the exact same problem in the summer too. Yep. So cook outside as much as you can. Absolutely.
And barbecue is great, so why wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's also a good time for a lot of salads.
Wait a minute.
Stuff that doesn't require heating.
Hold on, my food ate the salad.
Yeah, I've heard about this, but
yeah.
Well, it's like a big plate of bacon with a little bit of cilantro on top. That's a salad, right?
No, cilantro is gross. It's just soap. No, don't ruin the bacon. It doesn't need to be washed. All right. Do we have anything else we want to throw in here for heat?
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Long story short, cool down. Drink cold water. If you want to fight us, you can drink hot, but our votes are on cool.
Our votes are on cool, but not cold. One more quick thing I've heard of, but I've never seen any clinical validation of something somebody once called thermal shock, which happened when somebody was working in a factory in like crazy hot weather. So it was a factory. It was actually a foundry where it was up over up around 120 degrees Fahrenheit apparently. And at break, they went and sat in their car and ran the air conditioning. And the sudden change in temperature, like he'd started his car with a remote starter before break, and so it was super cool. Like the car was really cold when he got into it, and that apparently sent his body into shock and did some pretty serious harm. I haven't seen any validation of that, but any change in temperature should be gradual if it can be.
Absolutely.
Ideally.
We've got an interesting comment here from Freedom for Us. He says he done a couple of casseroles on the barbecue. It worked great.
Interesting.
Yeah, pictures or it didn't happen. Feedback at prepperpodcast.ca.
I was going to say, I wonder if that'd be low and slow or how that would work.
Yeah, it's.
You could also just send us some casserole, and that would be great too.
That would be fine too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Send it express though.
Oh yeah. Good point.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do a prepper potluck at some point. That'd be fun.
I think that would be good. Yeah.
Get everybody together, and here's your best outdoor cooked meals.
Yeah, maybe we'll do an episode on that, and we can get everybody in the live chat to show what it is that they've brought to the potluck.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, that can be fun.
All right,
we're gonna add that to the list.
When you're choosing your drinks, avoid sugar, avoid caffeine, and avoid alcohol. All of those things will. I'll be the first one to say I don't think there's anything better than cold beer on a hot day. But alcohol and caffeine are both specifically diuretics. They will increase your dehydration, and sugar will also make your body work harder to process it. So if you can avoid the sugar, avoid caffeine. Water is best. Natural sugar.
Away my coffee?
Sorry?
You're not taking away my coffee, are you?
Oh, no. Just minimize it. Switch to decaf earlier in the day, which we can all probably do.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea.
But make sure like any caffeine or alcohol that you're consuming, you have to offset it with an appropriate amount of water, and then replace those electrolytes as we discussed at the beginning of the episode. Get those back going. Otherwise, you sweat more than just water, and you need to replace that.
Being an Iron Hand here has a good point in the live chat as well. You can put the Mylar emergency blankets on windows. Helps a lot, and you can see through it too.
Interesting.
See through them. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I will have to try that and experiment.
I'm definitely going to have to try that and see.
Yep.
Well, we used to put aluminum foil on the windows up in the territories during summer to keep the light out, but
yeah,
I used to do that when I worked nights.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Kept a little bit.
And by the way, you can buy those Mylar blankets at rapidsurvival.com.
Thanks for the plug. Appreciate it.
It's why I'm here.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the podcast challenge.
Don't get too hot. That's a good challenge.
That's a great challenge.
So stay hydrated. Make sure that you have means to independently do so. Right? Don't rely on being able to resupply. The days that I actually go out to work instead of working from my home office, I'm on the road 300-400 kilometers, and especially now that it's difficult to just drop in and get a drink or get a snack, I've made it my challenge to be able to be completely self-sufficient while I'm out. So whatever you need, however much liquid you need to stay hydrated, make sure that you have that with you. And again, we can measure that by checking your urinary output. And so that's especially true if you have a grid fail, excessive AC, whatever. And then at home, make sure that you have the ability to keep yourself hydrated should the power go off.
Which I think is what actually a few years ago in France they had that big heat wave going on there, and like France is like 85% or something nuclear powered, and they actually had to shut down a bunch, and they had a bunch of people die in France because their small little flats that they have don't have a whole bunch of stored water there, and they had a bunch of old people die in the space of a week because they all got basically dehydrated and heat stroked out.
Absolutely, and I mean.
Insane.
We can talk. We I think we talked about it in the water episode, which I think was episode 7 or 8, 9, somewhere in there. It was in the first 10. Water. I mean, water's life, right? Without water, nothing else exists. We had that problem. If you are a Southern Ontario person, you know where the town of Walkerton is, because there was a big to-do there probably about 15 years ago, where the entire town's water supply was contaminated. A whole bunch of people died from E. coli, I want to say.
Yeah, it was,
and they literally had to truck in, hundreds of tractor trailers full of bottled water to keep those people going. That takes time, right? So even though help is probably coming, don't rely on it.
Nope. And if you do come up with a way to help keep yourself cool with the power being out, or a grid fail, or whatever scenario it is that you're dealing with, flip an email on the feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. Let us know what you came up with for the podcast challenge, and then we'll share it out with everybody else, and we can all start learning from each other.
Success is mutually beneficial to all of us.
You got it. Let's move to upcoming events.
All right, so we finally have an update for TACOM Canada 2020. So unfortunately, thanks to the COVID, it's been delayed until April 23rd to 25th of 2021 so far.
This is further proof to me that this whole thing was a scam by the Trudeau government to take our guns.
Hey.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Welcome to the list of possibilities.
I just think there's maybe wanting us to see how much BS like authoritarian rules we'd put up with before we said get stuffed. Anyway, so yeah, there is still a ticket link on the show notes. You can click on that; you'll get more details there. But basically, just because of the vendor issues and having people need lead time to get their displays and items to the International Center in time, he had to delay it until basically late April. So yeah, that's if you've already bought a ticket, no big deal. From what I understand, it's still the same ticket that's still valid for the later show, and yeah, nothing's really changed except for the date.
It gives us more time to save up for the internet.
That's exactly right.
If you would like to be named on our live podcast from the show, drop us an email, and we will gladly accept donations for the internet package so that we can broadcast, and we will talk about you a whole lot.
We sure will.
More than just that one time that I plug Rapid Survival every episode. But
all right, let's move into some shout outs where we could also mention you on the show.
I'm still going to shout out the listeners who make this fun, right? There's a lot of great feedback that we were getting from the chats tonight, and I absolutely love it. Keep it up, keep up the great stuff, and keep those emails coming.
Yeah, thanks for being interactive. It makes the show that much more fun when we get questions on the fly. So for myself,
it also just makes up for my lack of show notes.
Oh boy, they don't see the show notes. It's fine.
Well, not most of them anyway.
Well, not most. Yeah. So I've got a shout out to listener Fish, who completed the episode number 75 challenge by successfully backing up a 53-foot trailer. So
nice.
Well, yeah.
That is fantastic. I've never done that.
No, neither have I.
Can't say I have either.
Yeah, sent a couple pictures. I did not see any damage or anything anywhere. It looks like it was a successful mission. And,
or successful photography.
Or successful photography. That's right. It's all about angles. But, I appreciate you completing the challenge from episode 75, which was learning how to back up a trailer.
Right.
Well done, Fish.
Yeah.
All right. I got one for listener Jason, who offered to help me with the transitioning the animals from province to province if and when a move becomes a reality. So the prepper community is always awesome, just like the gunny community. Yeah, it's nice when people reach out to offer assistance. This is fantastic.
Awesome.
That's great.
All right, let's move into email and iTunes reviews, which is blank because there was, Fish mentioning the fact that he finished off episode number 75 challenge. But besides that, no other emails. So
crickets.
And nothing for you for this section.
I'll take no news as good news.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Well, there was that news about backing up the trailer, so that's good news.
There we go. Yeah, that is good news.
Yeah.
Beyond that, all right.
Well, with that, I will bring episode 76 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Submit a review. It certainly helps other people find us, unless it's a 1-star.
But even that helps.
it gives me something to complain about. So,
And that's all we need is more things for Eric to complain about. We do record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click that notification tab. Gives you an alert when we're going live. You can contact me directly on Instagram at ppswo or by email, Alan with 1L at prepperpodcast.ca.
But you can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. You can also find me at Canadian Patriot Podcast occasionally, when work allows, on iTunes and YouTube. We record on Monday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. There you can find us discussing why government waste overheats me.
every week.
Oh.
Jeez.
That's two. That's two.
All right, so please check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat while you're buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks for joining us this evening. And until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
And keep learning.